Hello, everyone. My guest today is a talent and literary agent for the Jackson Agency. She has been featured in the New York Times, Medium, Oz Magazine, and many others for her commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Please welcome the wonderful Tiauna Jackson.
Hello. Thank you for
Hi.
having me.
How's everything going?
Everything is going as well as it can, considering everything that's happening.
Everything going on, and everything is a lot. So, everyone healthy, happy, safe?
Yeah, on my end, yeah.
Oh, that's great. So wanted to just start right off with how you became an agent, how you started the Jackson Agency. I know you get that question all the time, but it's always really interesting to me because, I think a lot of people are like, how did you even start a talent agency? Why did you go into this? And being a talent agent is a very specific field. So I'm just curious what your background is and how you got into it.
Yeah, so I started my agency in 2014, built entirely from the ground up. I didn't have any previous agency experience. It wasn't for a lack of effort. I just wasn't able to gain employment. And it kind of also came from a place of making sure that talented artists had someone to champion them, because it became pretty evident quickly that there really weren't that many people out here dedicated to championing the underserved.
Yeah. And did you start the agency in Georgia or was it started in LA or because I know you have multiple locations?
Yes, we've expanded, but the original location, our headquarters, is still Los Angeles.
Oh, in Los Angeles. Now you've expanded to all these different areas, which is crazy.
Yes.
So who are the people in your life that influenced you? Whether it's family or an icon or just
Mhm.
whoever it could be.
Yeah, first and foremost, I think like most people were influenced by our parents. I was raised by my single father, so he is very instrumental in who I became, basically, and how I operate and the values that I have. When it comes to, I would say, idols that we have from, worshiping celebrities, I was heavily influenced as a teen by Gabrielle Union. I actually started her fan club and met her when I was about 21 years old.
Oh, wow.
She actually was a catalyst for change for me. I wasn't proud of where I was working. I was actually working at a movie theater. And although I was paying my bills, that wasn't really what I envisioned for my life post college. So whether she realizes it or not, meeting her actually did change my life.
No, that's awesome. Um, I was influenced by my dad as well, and there's a lot of values that I hold today because of the examples that he set. Is there anything specific that is it just being a good person, being kind, looking out for people, that sort of thing? Because I mean that to me is who you are and who you seem to be with everything that you're doing.
Yeah, with my family history, for instance, the men in my family have often been the first at something. So my grandfather was the first Black man hired by Los Angeles County. My father was the first Black superintendent of a manufacturing plant. So when I became the first known Black woman to have multiple WGA franchises, it's just kind of normal for me and my family. We've never been one to shy away from adversity and challenging situations.
Yeah. No, that's wonderful, and you know, it's so interesting because most people that start an agency, they come from an acting background or they're an agency assistant, sometimes a casting director, and for you to I'm just going to start this agency, and I'm just going to go for it. That's huge, and that's
Yeah, and again, it wasn't for a lack of effort. I tried to get entry level employment. I even tried as few as 2 years ago, where I interviewed at a few agencies after having had 5 years of agenting under my belt. I was
right.
still told I wasn't the right fit.
Um, well, that's why we're talking today, and hopefully we can get some of this stuff, talked about. So, you're a champion for underserved and underrepresented talent. I imagine you've seen some phenomenal talent in your life that couldn't break those barriers. I'm curious if you have a specific example of actors that you've met or, talent, because I know you do literary as well, that just could not get past those barriers, and that's what pushed you to start this agency and be where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Primarily the roster that we work with now it's made up of talented, diverse individuals with their own unique skill sets, and we're still constantly fighting, trying to get through these barriers. We've had instances where we've auditioned for major shows, but we've lost them to the bigger agencies because producers are going to go with maybe a celebrity that they, have a bigger name or they're used to seeing. Doesn't mean that my clients weren't talented. There's a lot of politics that plays into the entertainment business too that people aren't really aware of.
Yeah. And I'm sure that that's a big part of what you do as well. Sometimes people think like, well, an agency just submits me to projects on the system. But there's so much more to it, especially educating the talent on the business side of it and those politics and what, is all involved. Because there are certain things that your agent can definitely help you out with, but there's certain things that you have to do on your own as a talent. I don't know if you have specifics about that, but I'm sure there's a lot of things that you've talked to your talent about to, work on and.
Yeah, exactly. We do spend some time letting them know, here's kind of what we need you to do. We need you to be working on new materials. We need you to be networking. The first thing I'll tell anyone is I'm not a miracle worker. Right. Having an agent doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get auditions and you're going to go out. What we are is just another resource to help you achieve your goal.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to talk about diversity in castings because that's what we do on our site. So I want to pull back the curtain a little bit. So we all know that castings will have a variety of roles, requesting talent with various age ranges, various ethnic appearances, gender, all that stuff. What everyone might not know, maybe they assume, but that the submission totals on the casting side are different, in some cases drastically, for people of color when those submissions come through. Why do you think the talent pool is smaller? Let's just start with that question.
Well, it ties into where we're at right now with the industry, which is a massive demand for change. So you're dealing with a industry, for instance, where 90% of executives are Caucasian.
Right.
And so when you have executives not being diverse, not being equitable, not practicing inclusion, you cannot be surprised that the shows, the commercials, the plays, whatever it is that you're trying to audition for being greenlit, you can't be surprised that there are no roles for you because your executives they're basically going to approve what they know. That's the one thing we've talked about in the human existence is that we only know what we know. We can only relate to what we can relate to, which is why diversity is so important. That the only way we're going to get true equity and inclusion is if we start including others in these conversations and putting others in these prominent places of decision making.
Yeah, so it's not just about the talent pool itself. It's higher ups, it's the talent agencies, casting even. There's different areas where, it is predominantly white and the people of color are less and less. So that is interesting that could play a part in that smaller talent pool. And the other part of it is opportunities, right? So, there's, I think opportunities seem to be getting better, but they're still not where they need to be. I think there was something recently that said talent disproportionately, people of color outnumber like 6 to 1 on television series. Like it's still not where it needs to be. It doesn't represent the world and America and the diversity that we currently have. And so that's problematic.
Yeah, we're looking at roughly 4%. It hasn't really changed in terms of Black content creators. So people behind the scenes who can help move these stories to the mainstream. There's not much change, but what you're seeing is what I call PR crisis management, meaning right. These studios and these networks are putting Issa Rae and Lena Waithe out front and Ava DuVernay, and you're thinking, oh, things are changing. Look, I'm seeing them, but you're seeing projects from the same 3 to 5 people over and over again. Right. When are they going to open the doors to newcomers? When are they going to diversify the agencies with which they do business with?
So how do we make those changes permanent and not just reactive to, what's going on. Because that seems to be the case. We've seen that kind of go up and down, right? Like it's this reaction, like you said, a PR crisis of like, oh, we need to have more diversity. But then over time, it kind of reverts back to, where it was.
So what I've been calling for now is divestment, and it's a word we hear all the time. What does that really mean? Divest, 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 right? Yeah. Cliff's Notes version, talent makes an agency. It's not the other way around. And agents know that, but they don't want to tell the artist that because then that empowers the artist, right?
Yeah.
But that's the truth, is that the quality of talent at an agency elevates the agency status and how the agency is received in this business. And so to me, if you really want to impact change, you're going to need to divest from these oppressive systems, these systemically racist systems, these systemically racist agencies. You're going to need to leave them, and you're going to need to go to some of these boutiques that are owned by non-white people. I don't even want to say minorities anymore because that's getting played out. But the point is that you have other options. I say it like this: if this were a nail shop that had been practicing the systemic racism in Hollywood, we would have picketed it. Somebody would have burnt it down. It would have been shut down and no longer exists. But for some reason, we're afraid to do that with these other agencies. We're afraid to lead. You don't need to be afraid to lead. The work will follow you wherever you go, but you have to divest. If you don't divest, then you need to shut your mouth.
Yeah, it's just a continuing cycle. That's a really great point. So what are the pros and cons of having a small talent pool, and how does that affect the diversity we see in the media, whether it be TV, film, or commercials, or anything else really?
Yeah, so when we're just talking about a small talent pool, we're looking at maybe 20 to 30 clients. That's typically what an agency would have at certain levels of each assigned to each agent. So the advantages of having a smaller client pool is you can kind of do more one-to-one attention. It is kind of difficult to have 1,000 clients and focus on all of them. But when you have, a handful, a dozen or so people, you can effectively manage what opportunities are out there for them and manage their expectations. The other advantages are you won't get lost in the cracks, if that makes sense. A lot of times the biggest concern that artists have when they come to me is, well, how many clients do you have? I'm at this other agency and it just feels like I'm getting lost in the shuffle. And I just want a little bit more one-to-one attention, et cetera. And I can understand that. But I think we also have to be realistic about our expectations, because even if you had that one-to-one attention, that doesn't automatically mean that you'll get more auditions and that you'll have better results. Right. It's like what I tell people when they come in for meetings. If casting doesn't like your face, they don't like your face. There's nothing we can do about it.
Right. Yeah, no, that's, because on the talent end, you want someone to kind of help manage your career, but there's a lot that you do have to do on your own. But I get that you want to not feel lost in that shuffle, because I've heard that from a lot of talent who are at these big agencies and feel like it's just like, I'm just a number. Like they don't really care about my career and anything like that. And, it's not that a smaller agency will give you that 100% attention all the time, but it is nice to feel less like you are just part of a cattle call, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's very important that they know your name. You know what I'm saying? Because that's been a complaint too. Like I came in, they didn't know who I was, and I've been here 7 years.
Yeah, that could be a problem. So we've talked a lot in the past about creating your own content, because especially now it's easier than it's ever been. I think it was Rob McElhenney. I was listening to an interview with him. He's like, your phone has a better camera than we had on season 6 of Always Sunny. He's like, not season 1, season 6. He's like, you can do it. He's like, that's my advice, to just go out and create something. So how important is it, do you feel, to creating your own content as an actor or a writer?
For me, creating your own content is vital and important if you really are serious about this. And there's some things I've said to people along the way of like, I prefer to have actors who are also writers, because I'm of the belief that, when you're writing something, you're creating these characters, and each character has a distinctive voice in your head. And there's a certain way these characters deliver lines and how they pause and how they think and how they move. And to me, it is a direct correlation to your strengths as an actor if you have a thorough understanding of that. So I'm always a fan for the actor, writer, producer hybrid, hyphenate. But for content creation, it's also helpful because let's face it, when you're starting out, going out for auditions, commercials, you come in, you smile, you leave, right? Yeah. TV shows, you have maybe 5 lines. Here's your water, sir, and that's it. You don't have character development.
Right.
So you're not getting the same things in the real world that you were getting when you were in college, going for your BFA or your MFA. You're coming out into a world where you've been trained to be a leading actor, and now you're being relegated to, he went that way, right? Yeah. So it is significantly different. And so the one way that you can manifest your own destiny is through content creation. Yeah. You can create works that showcase your strengths and your skill set as an actor. And you can even do things through trial and error. If you say, hey, I really want to try this moody, deep, dark character, you can go shoot a web series and try it out. If it's garbage, just leave it on your hard drive. You don't have to put it out into the world, but you cannot be afraid to create. That's the number one thing. So for us, we encourage content creation. We often have collaboration amongst our clients. And so we have a couple of web series that are out that have other clients from the agency starring in them.
So your literary team and your actors will work together and collaborate on projects?
Mainly my actors, but we're actually right now, one of the producers that we signed is super excited. And so we're going to start working on something together internally. So eventually we will have that cross-pollination between all 3 departments, yes.
That's awesome. And I think that's a really good point, to not be afraid to make junk, or like something that you're like, this was terrible, let's redo it. Because the idea that all these people who created their own content, like made something amazing the first time and it was wonderful and they got super successful, it's just not true. Like Correct. You got to be able to make junk so you can look at it and be like, oh, I see why that was terrible. Let me redo that. And like you said, it doesn't have to go out there, because I get that fear of being like, oh, this is, for everyone to see. But if you're just not even doing it, then you're just hurting yourself. And I could see how that would be super beneficial, just understanding the, directing side and understanding how a camera works and understanding, spacing and all that stuff is super helpful if you're creating your own content.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It makes you more well-rounded.
Yeah. Do you have any talent? You mentioned this just a second ago, but I want to hear about it more. Talent who are creating their own content. How do they go about it? And are you involved in that process, et cetera?
So they all move in different ways. Some are very independent and they produce their stuff. Others will, like I said, will pull from other clients or friends from the agency. I've been involved in one project where I have a little cameo in an episode. There's a web series called I'm Bae, #I'm Bae by Jessica Simone. And at the end, there's like this congratulations. And so I tape something here in the office, congratulating her on all of her bookings and her success. So I do get in on the fun from time to time. There's another skit that we did a monologue challenge that we tend to do every August. And so one of my clients decided to ad-lib a scene before a training day monologue that I gave him. And so then I went and recorded some things and sent it back to him and jumped in and joined the fun. So I do have moments like that, but for the most part, I stay out of it. Nikita Francois has a series called Zatanna, which is her way of manifesting her destiny into the Marvel universe. So when we're talking about content creation, the sky's the limit. Dan Newford does skits all the time. Aaron Coleman does skits all the time. They all do skits. You know what I'm saying? They're all constantly creating that content, engaging with audiences. We even have days as an agency where I'll say, here's your action item for the day. Post one of your commercials and tag some CDs. Yeah. Because we know that sometimes CDs get bored. That was the main thing that I heard during quarantine was like, I'm looking at new talent on Instagram. And so we were like, post all your stuff, tag your CDs, hashtag your stuff, do what you're supposed to do. You have to be proactive. If you're not proactive, you can't really expect anything to take off for yourself.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a 30-minute pilot that you're putting together. It could be just that content for Instagram or Twitter. We've seen a lot of people get a lot of attention from funny videos that are 30 seconds long or
Exactly.
whatever it is. And they're just creating that content and putting that out there. And eventually you start to get a following. And if it's good, people notice.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is be tasteful, be mindful, make sure it's good. Don't just be out here throwing up, bad stuff and then tagging people.
That is my next question.
Okay.
Do you have some examples of what not to do when creating content? Because, it's like you want to create content, but
Mhm.
be mindful, like you said.
So you have to be careful with certain things. I would even say with curse words and language, subject matter, there are some things that you just don't want to do. It's kind of like how they say, even if the scene involves you having a gun or gunfire, do not bring a prop gun into the situation. That thing, don't go to an audition with weapons, right?
Right.
So I wish I could, because you see them and you're just like, and then you just kind of forget about them, right? But
Yeah.
things that there's something to be said about good lighting, good sound, good editing.
Yeah.
And so I think that what you should do is be more patient with yourself and the process, because it is a process. And as you create your own content, you'll find, wow, there's a lot more involved than I really thought, right? Because
Yep.
you're going to try to get rid of the hiss on the tape from the sound. You're going to try to add in ambient noise and, do all these things, do color correction. There's so many things that go into filmmaking. It is not just, I pick up my iPhone and I shoot things. It really is not that.
Right. Yeah. No.
So I would say, like they kind of teach you guys, make sure you're staying true to yourself and your character. If you're trying out something new, then try something new. But I would say maybe send it to 3 to 5 trusted friends to get their feedback before you go public with it. Because the Creative Commons has a course called, oops, I posted that on the internet. Right? Once it's out there, period. You try to delete it, you're going to have to get a Ray Donovan like Chris Evans did and scrub the internet clean.
Oh my God. Yeah. Be careful with what you put out there. I'm sure actors, one of the things that probably feels complicated is that if I wanted to create content that involves other actors, but I don't necessarily have the money to pay them, how would you suggest going about that? It seems like actors would collaborate, without being paid if you're working together on something and it's something small. But I think that might be something that could come up or make people think I can't create content because I can't afford it.
Yeah, compensation is something that is negotiable. You can barter certain things. When I was filming projects for people, I got paid in like a case of beer once, and I was happy. You know what I'm saying? So there are other things that you can do. You can barter, you can try different things. And if someone still needs compensation, then they just don't get to work on your project. You're going to have to find somebody else who sees your vision as like-minded and is down to hustle and grind with you. Because that's ultimately what this is. Entertainment is a hustle. It's not going to come easy in any way, shape, or form.
No. Yeah, it is a very, very tough road. And, I imagine that actors who go out on auditions a lot, get callbacks, and have success, they still find it difficult and they quit sometimes. Do you think that with opportunities being less so for people of color, does that make that harder to keep people on your roster and keep them motivated and keep them, going, year after year?
Yeah, especially with the Los Angeles market, because let's face it, Los Angeles is all about instant gratification. And
Right.
so I have had what you would call agency hoppers, where they just hop from agency to agency to agency, trying to be, thinking that it's us that's the issue. When the truth is your resume has background on it, you haven't taken improv or Meisner, and your headshots are 5 years old.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of times it is your marketing as well. And then if we ask you, okay, what casting directors do you have relationships with? Who have you studied with? What workshops have you attended? Well, I don't do anything. Well, changing your agent isn't going to help at this point, because you've done nothing to further your career.
Yeah, exactly. What are you doing on your end? A question that we have been getting a lot lately, especially now, is what is the best way to approach an agency if I'm just starting out? Is it going to be more difficult because sets have all these protocols and it's going to be harder for newer talent to break out? So I'm curious if you have any advice for new talent trying to find representation with everything going on?
Yeah, I assembled a new actors checklist for that explains at a minimum, here's what you need to have. So I use this phrase a lot of bare minimum requirements. Okay, you can't just come to me or any other agency and say, oh, I'm Mexican, you should take me because diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
You still have to meet the bare minimum requirements. There are certain things in terms of training and experience that one must have in order to have an agent and in order for that agent to be effective. There's nothing worse than sending a green actor out who doesn't know what to do when they go out and audition. And then maybe they get frustrated and upset, and then they can damage the agency's reputation, which can then hurt the other clients at the agency. So that's sometimes why agents are very guarded and specific with who they're looking for. And then there are other agents that just go for slam dunks. They're like, hey, I only take C-list and D-list celebrities because they're easier to get out. It is very hard to get out green talent. And I need everybody to understand that the path of least resistance is just holding out for a celebrity. To do what we're doing at my agency is insanely hard and difficult. It is not an easy means by any way, shape, or form. So if you're reaching out to any agency, first and foremost, you should research what their submissions requirements are. Most agencies have websites where they talk about their submissions requirements on those websites. You need to follow them. The worst thing is being involved in a blind carbon copy of you. I'm looking for representation. I'm 5'6", 180. Here's my Instagram. No.
Yeah. Who's going to jump at that? Like,
exactly. The only way that's going to work is commercially, if you're like, oh, I actually need a guy who looks like that, right? But theatrically, not so much, because you guys are a dime a dozen. And I know that hurts you to hear that, but there's over 1 million of you chasing this dream.
Yeah, no, you can throw a rock and you will find someone who is beautiful and talented in Los Angeles, but having that business acumen and having that, background and that, sensibility, that's what seems to be rare. And those are the people that tend to move forward and get ahead and excel.
Exactly.
From what I've seen as well. So don't carbon copy every agent in Los Angeles. That is great advice. Anything, and the other part of that too, actually, with talent is don't expect that, okay, I got an agent, now I'm going to start going on tons of auditions. I'm going to start booking everything. There's more to it than that, obviously. And the other part is, hey, this role is out. Why am I not getting submitted like 1,000 times, basically? So I'd love for you to talk about, selectivity with submissions and why that's important and why you do that as an agent.
Yeah, so first and foremost, when I started the agency, there were about 3,000 submissions per role within a breakdown. Okay, so those are huge numbers for one role.
Yeah.
So statistically, you didn't stand a chance anyway, right? Now apparently it's gone up to 5, as high as 7,000 sometimes based on what casting directors post online. So you have to understand these numbers and be realistic about your approach. And that's why sometimes you're better off waiting to be an exact fit. Like, for instance, I had a client where there's a movie filming in Florida that's like a biopic, and my client was a dead-on ringer for the woman that the film was about. So it was a no-brainer. She physically matched everything. Blonde, blue eyes, 5'3", right? And we're like, oh, this is perfect. So we're going to try to push to try to get you into that project.
Yeah.
I think what you guys really have to understand is that each casting director is different. No two casting offices are the same, just like no two breakdowns are the same. There are certain things we see with consistency from certain offices, but then like commercially, I can always tell when it's an advertising firm or a production company doing casting, because the breakdowns are just crazy. They just don't make any sense. Okay, they're confusing. Sometimes you have to call an email and be like, did you really mean this? Like, what's going on here? So you have to be flexible first and foremost in this industry. And you have to understand that although you may see yourself some type of way, casting directors are working professionals in the industry. They see thousands upon thousands of faces. They know what works and what doesn't work. And so as much as you may want it, as much as I may want it for you, you just may not be what they're really looking for, okay? There are meetings that casting directors may have ahead of time with a director or a producer that says, okay, what kind of type are you looking for in this character of Bobby? And they might say, oh, I'm looking for a Matt Damon type. Well, I can't go and push for my Denzel Washington type because they've already had a concept meeting that ascertain, yeah, we're looking more so for a Matt Damon. Now, is it confusing when you have a breakdown that says all ethnicities? Sure, but that just means they're open to, maybe somebody else will catch our eye, things will change. There have been several shows, I believe Aisha Hines' character on 911 was actually written for a male. Aubrey Plaza's character on Legion was actually written for a male. So there are times where someone else might come along that actually really embodies that role, and they'll change that role. And that's like, if you want to talk about the number one thing that I need everybody to understand, casting directors don't make mistakes. So if they call you in for an audition, you need to be prepared and go to that audition, not come back to us and say, oh, well, the role says that they want Asian, but they called me, I'm not Asian. It's like, no shit. Everyone can see that. But obviously there was something about you that they wanted to see. And you also have to understand that they may actually be calling you in under that role, but they're going to have you read for another role once you're there. So when you hear the phrase, don't block your blessings, that's what a lot of you guys are doing, and you need to stop.
Yeah.
You need to be grateful and thankful that you've had an opportunity, because I guarantee you there's 900,000 other artists that did not get an audition today.
Yeah. And I speak with casting offices all the time, and when those agencies are submitting, just basically throwing spaghetti at the wall and just saying like, oh, here's just all these submissions, it drives them crazy. And when agencies are selective and really thoughtful, and afterwards pitching and explaining why, they think that talent is a right fit for that role, they appreciate that. And then that casting director has a better relationship with that agency, and ultimately that's better for you. It's not great if you just see 1,000 submissions on your submission report necessarily. So that's a really good point, that it takes time, and it has to be the right fit and the right role. And maybe you can fit into a role that doesn't meet that exact criteria on the breakdown, but give it a shot. Like you said, be prepared. Like just go into it. That's another thing that we hear all the time is they weren't ready, they weren't prepared, and that might be your one shot, your one.
Exactly. That's why in our agency we say, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. You should always be training, always. Even if you're just training at home, doing monologues, writing content, creating skits, always be doing something so you stay in shape, because you just never know.
Yeah, especially right now. I mean, you can do that. I get that it can feel frustrating because everything's just doing self-tapes at home, or just it might feel even less because there's just less things casting right now. But there's a lot that you can do to prepare and get ready for those opportunities, because eventually we'll get, I don't know what back to normal is. There's no back to normal, but we'll eventually get to a place where there will be, I don't even know how to put it.
Yeah, I call it a trend, because that's ultimately what it is the game is changing. And so now we're analyzing trends. So even right now, as we prepare for this second wave, now we know, okay, animation didn't stop working. So we spent the summer really pushing my voiceover clients to get their reels together, because that was our bread and butter during this time, was VO and animation.
Yeah. Is there anything specific that you would recommend to talent right now to focus on or spend time doing that you feel like would be the most beneficial?
It's really about your reels. You guys always want shots, and sometimes you're able to get them, but your demo reels or your clips are lacking. That's the key. Because we can look at a headshot, a headshot can just be, it's just your face, right? It could be a selfie, it doesn't matter. It's just your face, okay, this is you. But your demo reel and your clips is your body of work. It speaks for you, it speaks to your range, it speaks to your screen presence, which is one of the most important things. So I would say really spend that time in finding the right clips that really showcase and sell your brand.
Yeah, no, that's a great advice. With finding an agent, just to circle back on that one last time, because you talked about how, look for those boutique agencies, look for minority-owned talent agencies, look for people who are doing things out of the box. Is there anything specifically that you would suggest to talent who are looking for a new agent, or things to look for with those agencies? Or maybe it's just in general things that you should be looking for when you're looking to sign with a new agency?
Well, you know, due diligence is number one. You're always going to want to go and research that agency, maybe ask around to people who have been there or are still there, and just get their point of view and perspective. You can't always use Yelp and places like that, because oftentimes those are people who they never audition, they're just gruntled and they're just trying to tank your agency. So you really want to weigh all the pros and cons and then see if you can get a meeting there and really see what's going on and trust your gut and the vibe that you get from that meeting first and foremost. I can probably say our meetings are probably atypical. I think meetings normally you just kind of sit there and talk about golf and sports. I'm in here talking about here's everywhere I need you to go and here's what I need you to do before you can even come here. So we're a little bit different and more concise in knowing exactly what we need our talent to have, so that way they can hit the ground running and not be what I would call a lame duck, meaning somebody who's kind of slowing us down, just dragging the team down. We want to have people who can come in and match the level that we're currently at, match the tenacity, match the energy. So that way we're moving together as one strong unit.
And you, your agency is unique in that you have branches in different locations. You have location in California, Arizona, and Georgia. What is the major differences between those three markets?
I'm in like 5 markets now.
Oh, so well, even better.
So we're in LA, the Southwest, the Southeast, New York. We just added Chicago, and we've had the UK for a couple of years as well.
Damn.
So obviously, yes, each market is different. Los Angeles is obviously the busiest market. But like I said, when I'm looking at differences in culture, Los Angeles is all about instant gratification, where my New Yorkers, they understand the game, they understand the hustle, they understand the importance of being deeply rooted in theater. LA just don't work like that because we're just not a theater town, right?
Yeah, right.
The Southwest, you get a little bit of a blend of both because of their proximity to Los Angeles. Sure. So we found some successes in creating more opportunities for my Southwest-based clients because they can leave Nevada and come to LA to audition, or they can head on over to New Mexico to work on things at Netflix. With Chicago, there's only a handful of series that film there, but if they can travel to New York, then we can open up another market to them as well. So for me, it's always been about creating more opportunities. So what I tell people is the more that you can travel on your own dime, because let's face it, nobody's flying you out and paying for you to go anywhere. You're not Sandra Bullock, right? So the more you can travel on your own dime, the more opportunities I can get for you. So with that, we've been able to take some of our strong LA talent and have them work in other markets that they'll dominate, because LA is just different. I feel like if you can master the LA market, you'll be strong in like a Kansas market and a Florida market. They'll be like, oh my gosh, where'd you come from? It's just something about LA that really elevates you to a certain level of, I'll just say, excellence in that regard of how we operate, how things work, the tough skin that you have to acquire in working. And the same thing for New York. I had several conversations with some New York casting directors, and they were asking me, like, where are you getting your Georgia-based talent? Because they were having frustrations of, we injected $2 billion into this market overnight, and they don't have ground leagues. So, like, I'm not getting the quality of people that I'm used to getting. Like, where are you finding your people? I was like, oh, well, they have to do an obstacle course and a gauntlet, you know, in order to even just get in here. Because we did at one point in time, everybody had to audition using 7 sides, where we put them through a ringer to properly assess their range. Because in my experience, your reels didn't always show me what was really there. Yeah. So when it comes to how we submit to casting directors and what we do, I can look at your eco casts. You know, that's a beautiful thing about working on independent projects, because we do submit on independent low budget projects. One, if you book as a lead, you're going to make about $2,000 anyway for the week. So it's a win for you. But 2, it lets me really see how well you do with certain characters and what your true range really is. So everything that we do here is really deeply rooted in data and analytics as well.
No, that's great. Do you find that the talent that you have in all these other branches are all still trying to get to LA? Mm-hmm. And what's your advice to talent in all these markets who see LA as the ultimate goal and the ultimate dream?
Yeah, in my opinion, at this point now, LA becomes the ultimate dream when you've maxed out opportunities in your market. So for instance, the New Yorkers are like, man, I've been on all 7 shows in New York. Like, I can't work any other shows. So they have to go into other markets, and that makes sense. Yeah. I think that delusion drives a lot of artists into wanting to go to LA because they think that it's, you know, like, would insert some reality show, right? And it's not. It's about having 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 jobs, right?
Yeah.
Having 10 roommates, not having gas money, you know, in your car. Like, it is a struggle and a hustle, you know. And so that was like the first thing when I meet people and they ask what I do, and I'm like, I'm a talent agent. They're like, oh, well, I'd like to be in commercials. I'm like, yeah, they only pay $500. What? So everybody thinks because you're seeing this lifestyle of the glamorous, the 1%, if you will, they think that we're all just swimming in dough, and we're not.
Right. No, it's a hustle. It's a very tough business to be in, and it's said a lot, but you have to love it. It has to be something that at the end of the day, as an actor, it's the only thing that I can do that will, you know, bring me satisfaction, that I just love to do. And then, you know, as an agent, you have to love giving those opportunities, or helping talent find those opportunities, making that phone call. I've seen too many agents that are just doing it, but they absolutely hate it. It's like, why are you even doing this? It's like,
Yeah, I'll be honest. There are days where I'm like,
I think we're all like that at every company, always. Like, no one's like skipping into work ever. So yeah, that makes sense. But there, you know, at the end of the day, you have to feel like, am I making a difference? Am I impacting people's lives? I think, you know, that's something that is so great about being an agent, that even though it's that hard work, and I don't even know how you sleep with all those branches and everything else that you have to manage. I can't even begin.
It's being literally attached to your phone 24/7.
Yeah.
You know, your first thing I get up, if I wake up in the middle of the night at 1 a.m., okay, let me check an email and see if a booking came in last night, you know, and then forward it on. So that way when talent gets up, they have it. So it is a 24/7 job. It really is, because there are some casting directors who are ridiculous night owls, like Michael Donovan, where like a breakdown will come out at 2 a.m. You're like, what? What is going on?
Yeah, no, I'll see that stuff too. I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah, why is the phone dinging? But yeah, it especially now with everything that's going on, you got to think like, am I impacting people? Am I doing something with my life, with my legacy, that's important, even if it's affecting just one person? Is this impactful? And I think that's something that I love about the entertainment industry, is that you can create content that actually changes people's opinions about things and actually impacts people, probably more than anything else. You're not going to change people's opinions by arguing on Twitter. Like, it's just not going to happen. But film and media and something really funny, like a stand-up routine, like all those things can change people's perspectives and really impact change. And that's why, you know, I think it's so important.
Yeah, the media, it has this duality.
Yeah.
It can control you, and it can, you know, open up the hearts and minds of others. It depends. It's a tool. It's a very powerful tool, and it depends on how you use it when the power is in your hands.
Right. And so I think that, you know, what you're doing and the mission that your agency is on is just super important, to do things for the right reasons and to impact the market in a positive way. And I'm just personally grateful to, you know, that you're doing what you're doing. Before we sign off, I just wanted to know if there's anything in particular, advice-wise, that you'd like to give to actors or non-actors or anybody. Talk a little bit about what you're doing and anything you'd like to leave off with.
Yeah, the advice I would give to anyone: when you want something, you probably don't know where to begin, right? And it seems overwhelming. That seems to be the word of the day. I'm overwhelmed. But the truth is that if you don't actually try, you'll never know. Meaning, if you don't try, you don't get to fail. The failure is going to happen. And we've talked about that in content creation. I'm sure there's 50 million failures I've made as a self-made talent agent trying to figure this out on my own, because frankly, the industry just wouldn't create space for me. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that we don't try. We have to keep fighting. We have to keep trying, like you said, for what we believe in and what we want. And so for anybody who is hesitant, has doubts, you're going to have to put those behind you and just take that first step. And that first step could be taking your first acting class. That could be writing your first script. That could be taping your first monologue. But if you don't try, you'll never know. Like they said, if you don't try, you won't succeed.
Yeah. It's not just going to fall into your lap because you're talented.
Exactly.
It would be nice, you know, if just those opportunities come up. Thank you so much for spending time with me. I know you're crazy busy, so I truly, truly appreciate it. And talk to you later.
All right. Thank you.
I need a catchphrase. I need something to end these things with.
Yeah,
So maybe you can help me with that.
Well, you can't say Seacrest out. That's already
All right. See you later.
Bye, Tommy.